Well, welcome to week two, and welcome back to week two of mobile security in general, right? I hope you guys have had a great time with the first week's content as we really explored the mobile threat landscape, right? And how OS architecture helps or fails to defend against our modern attacks, right? Now, this week we're going to be turning our attention to mobile applications and the ones that you and I install every day, right? We're also going to look at some of the security flaws that make those vulnerable. So let's jump right into it. So why does app security matter, right? Well, we often think of mobile OS security as the primary line of defense. But let's be real, apps are truly the front line. A secure platform like Android or iOS can still host a poorly written app that exposes user data. It leaks API keys or could even store login credentials in plain text. And unfortunately, that's not rare. Many popular apps have been found with security flaws due to bad development practices. So not because of some elite hacker with a hoodie and some coffee. No, those bad development practices have caused these issues, right? The insecure coding line that I put here, huge. Now, I want to introduce you guys to the OWASP model, OWASP Mobile Top 10. It's a 2024 overview. They drop this about every year. But let me just introduce you really just to the key frameworks that we're going to use this semester, right? Now, this list highlights really the most critical app risk, right? So we've got something like M1, which is inadequate or improper credential usage, M2, which is our inadequate supply chain security, like M5, insecure communication, and of course M9, which would be insecure data storage, or M10, insufficient cryptography. Now, of course, we're going to focus a little bit about our data storage a bit for this week, and it's really one of the most common and dangerous flaws that we'll encounter. But if we're going to encounter this, what is it, right? Well, insecure data storage, it really just happens when sensitive information like tokens, passwords, or PII is stored on the device without proper protection. So let's think about storing a password in shared preferences as a simple key value pair. No encryption, no protection. That's kind of like, what is it? It's kind of like leaving your house key taped to your front door, right? You're technically storing it, but not securely. So this really just applies to a lot of different things, right? It applies to your shared preferences. They're often used for authentication tokens, our SQL-like databases. So those are for storing our user profiles and transaction histories, our cache files and logs, and even some external storage which other apps can read. So there's a ton of different options, right? And of course, I wanted to bring another real-world example up into this as to why it's still so important. And I think there's a great case study about this Twitter API key leak. Now, this came from actually directly from Twitter and their own mobile app a few years ago. So developers, they accidentally shipped the app with a hard-coded API keys and secrets. Now, these were buried into the code, but it was also easily recoverable by reverse engineering the APK. So anyone that downloaded the app could extract those keys and interact with Twitter's backend services as if they were trusted by the app, or they were a trusted app, right? And the thing is, not only did it violate those API terms, but it also introduced a major abuse potential. Bots, spam, impersonation, you name it. All of it broke loose in there. But when we're talking about storage locations and our risks that we have, well, here's just the most common places that developers typically store data, and also kind of how they can go wrong, right? So your internal storage, it's great, it's private to the app, but it is still vulnerable if the device is rooted, right? And then you can maybe, instead of having internal storage, what about external storage? Well, anyone can access this, your photos, your downloads, etc. But you should never store sensitive data there. Anyone can access it, right? Then we have shared preferences, which is fine for flags and settings, but not for secure tokens, passwords, or session identifiers. Now, SQLite, yeah, it's good for structured data, but it defaults to plain text unless you use certain tools like SQL Cipher. And if you're not using SQL Cipher, you're basically opening up the doors, right, for anyone to read this in plain text. But you're a developer, how can I secure data? How can I do it securely? Well, here's how you really do it right. You want to use encrypted share preferences, and you use that to encrypt your key value pairs. You also should use SQL Cipher or Room with encryption wrappers for databases. And Room is another tool we'll show about later. You can also use Android's key store, and those can store your cryptographic keys, and it never hard codes them, which is very nice. And it also, just one other rule in general, if you're talking about storing data securely, is also just minimize what you store. If you don't need it, don't save it, period. But let's jump into this. So we have a tool here called MobSF. Now, MobSF is just short for Mobile Security Framework. And that's all it is. Simple as that. But it's really great because we're gonna use this tool, this framework, to help us spot these problems. And we're using that tool, MobSF. This is going to be similar to maybe some other tools if you guys have used maybe in some other security classes, if you've done some pen testing as well. There are a lot of frameworks that are out there that are great and are very useful. More than likely you've already touched one before, but this is just built for mobile applications. Now, MobSF, it is a static and dynamic analysis tool. It can do both. And you can upload an APK and get in a security audit in seconds. So what can you identify with this? Well, you can identify where sensitive data is being stored, very useful. You can also figure out whether encryption is being used. And it can even highlight vulnerable code patterns. It's very smart. Now, this is a professional grade tool, and by the end of the week, you'll be comfortable using it like an app security analyst, right? It won't take long as you get into it and realize that it's actually quite user-friendly as well. Which gets us into our lab overview. So we're going to be using some analysis with MobSF, and you guys are really going to be trying to identify insecure storage this week. So I'll give you a quick rundown of the lab. Here's what you're going to do. First off, like when you get up and get running, like you need to set up your tools. So you need to use the Android emulator from last week. You need to install MobSF. Now, I do think a Docker version, which I'll give you a link to, is the easiest and is included in your lab guide. Docker containers are great. I would recommend using Docker. You don't have to, but I would recommend it. And also, you need to download a vulnerable APK from the OWASP MSTG CrackMe's, either a level 1 or 2. It's up to you. Does not matter to me. You can figure this out. This is a graduate course. Go find whichever one you want. But I want you to run a static analysis. So what I mean by that is upload that APK to MobSF. Once you do that, I want you explore the report. I want you to look for plain text storage, hard-coded credentials, and dangerous permissions. Those 3 things are huge in this lab. Now, you can also use JADX, and you can use JADX to open this APK source and locate that shared preferences directory or other database storage directories, right? Now, I do have an optional section, but I do encourage you to do this optional section because I think it will help you tremendously, and it's just some manual inspection, right? So you can use the ADB shell, and you can explore the app's data directory, which is great. You can then find and inspect the XML, the JSON, or the database files that may contain stored data. It's a great way to start looking into this stuff and start understanding the architecture and getting into some of these apps and how you're built. Now, you're going to summarize all this up into a short and sweet report. So you're going to summarize 3 to 5 key security issues that are related to storage. And I want you to suggest some realistic fixes. So, for example, using the encrypted shared preferences instead of just shared preferences, right? And I want you to include screenshots. This is very important. I want you to include screenshots from MobSF and or decompiled code, right? And the whole point of this is that this lab is really set up to simulate real-world mobile app auditing. That's really what it is. And these are really some of the skills that pen testers and security engineers use every day. So you're going to then submit all this into one document, please, one document, PDF or Word. And I'm wanting to see, what did you find with MobSF and or JADX? And then what those issues mean in terms of security. How would you fix them? And then, of course, I have some bonus points, which you're going to see a lot more often because some of these labs it may be difficult for you to complete the labs. So I am including bonus points when you do really well in some of these labs, so you can boost your score throughout the semester. But I do have a bonus where if you have some screenshots of the ADV shell analysis, if you went that far, I would really like to see that and you have proof, like some good results within the ADV shell. I can give you bonus on that. So I think this week's lab really gives you a chance to start thinking critically and practically. How do we find flaws and how do we fix them? Now, to wrap up, insecure storage is one of the most common and dangerous mistakes in mobile apps, right? And now that you're learning how to spot it, this is great, and you are learning to figure out where this is at. Now, next week, we're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're going to reverse engineer an APK and use tools like Frida and JADX to inspect what apps are really doing behind the scenes. So, until then, good luck with the lab, and remember, store only what you need and always store it securely.